And that's what you've been doing your whole life. Every single time you've hated, judged, demonized, or criticized anybody, really what you've been doing is you've been denying your own self. Because your true identity is not that thing that you think you were born as. It's not the family you grew up with. It's not your nation. It's not your race. It's not your ethnicity. It's not whether you're rational or irrational. It's not what religion you believe. It's not whether you're an atheist or whoever else. It's not even whether you're human. It is everything. Literally everything. Infinity. But you see, this is so much. It's too much. It's too much for you. What you want is you want something small and comfortable, something manageable. You want to just be you, your memories, your little life, your little cushy position that you've constructed for yourself in your life. You see, your identity. That's what you've spent your entire life developing, is your particular identity. Whether it's a religious identity, a political identity, a scientific identity, or anything else like that. See, you've been denying your own oneness this whole time. That's the challenge of reality. That's the ultimate existential challenge, is to realize and understand your fullness and to accept it and not to deny it. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. That is God's entire agenda. You might wonder, why did God create all of this? What's the point? The point is that it's not that God created a bunch of stuff. Don't think of it that way. Think of it instead like this. Imagine that there was a moment in time, and this isn't quite right because, of course, God is outside of time, but let's just go with it as a metaphor, that there was a moment in time where God was sort of born. Somehow he was born, let's say, and there he was. And now most people imagine, okay, he started just creating stuff. And of course, he knew he was God and he knew what he was capable of, so he just starts creating a bunch of stuff. But it's not so simple. You see, before God can get to that, God has to ask himself, wait a minute, how did I get here? Why did I come into existence? Where did I come from and what am I? You see, there's a moment where God doesn't really know yet what he is. Because it's like God's not just born with self-knowledge. God needs to go through a process to arrive at self-knowledge. And this process is what we call life. That's what's happening right now, right this second. That's what's happening every second of everybody's life. It's God looking through itself, exploring itself, experiencing itself in order to realize what it is. God doesn't know what it is until it's lived through every possible experience and incarnation of consciousness to realize what it means to be God. You see? And since God is infinite, there's an infinite number of forms, it's forever experiencing itself through every possible incarnation. It's running through every single film reel. It has to do that to realize what it really means to be God, to realize infinity. The body of God, so to speak, is literally made up of this present experience that's happening to me right now, and this present experience that's happening to you right now, and every other experience that has ever happened to any living creature. All of that makes up the body of God. That's what God is. It's this infinite singularity. See? But it doesn't really know itself. To know itself, it has to go through this experience to see the consequences of what it means to be infinite. It's one thing to just say, oh yeah, I'm infinite, or just to say, oh yeah, God's infinite. It's another thing to actually go through every possible experience of what it means to be infinite. What it means to be infinite is that you're an ant crawling on a piece of wood in the forest, or you're a bear shitting in the woods, or you're a dragonfly flying through some pond, or you're a human being going through a breakup, or you're a Nazi killing Jews, or you're some corrupt politician scheming a way to steal a bunch of money from the government or something like this, right? It's every possible thing that could ever be experienced. That's what infinity means. And of course, for God, there's a really tricky issue here, which is that infinity is so big and the consequences of it are so astounding and marvelous and stupendous and horrifying that God needs to not only be able to go through every iteration to see what it really is, it also needs to understand, it needs to accept. It needs to accept what it is. And that's what this episode is about today. It's about helping you to accept what you really are. Because you see, when most people think of God, what they think of is they think of rainbows and butterflies and unicorns and pretty things and nice things and love and goodness and all of this. They don't think about the selfishness and the evil. They hold this as separate from God, again, creating a duality. But of course, with non-duality, we have to fold that in to this concept of God because God is oneness. It's one thing. You can't separate anything from it. So the most challenging thing with non-duality is to realize that you're everything, including all the ugliness and all the stuff that you hate. So as God is going through this film reel and it's looking through every single, imagine like, for example, if you were sitting there in a movie theater looking through an infinitely long film reel, every single movie that could be. Well, you're going to see some wonderful, beautiful movies, some romantic comedies and children's movies and fairy tales and this and that with happy endings. And that's going to be great. You're going to be happy. But then what happens when you see all the horror movies, all the slasher films, all the snuff films, all the violence, all the video of all the wars that have ever happened in human history, right? You're looking through all of this. You're looking through every single rape. You're looking through as though it was filmed on a camera. You're looking through every single act of genocide and terrorism and torture and evil and corruption and greed and all of this. You're looking through all of it. How do you think you're going to feel when you're looking at that? Are you going to be man enough, so to speak, to accept that as yourself? That's the greatest challenge for God, is to fully accept itself as what it is and not to deny, not to create smoke screens and excuses and rationalizations and all of this.